Well, I have the privilege of introducing Dr. Jonathan Wilson to our congregation. Pastor Diana and I have been talking about Jonathan, actually. Hope your ears weren't burning. Because they were all good things. She really wanted to bring Jonathan here to speak to us as a congregation. And so I'm super excited because I get to hear a lot about him. And I got to meet you for the first time this morning. I'm very excited about that. And also talk about some of his work. He's been teaching for almost 30 years, is that right? And he is considered a scholar at large at this point in time. He has been affiliated with Carey and Regent as well, where Diana and I went to school. But also, he has recently put out a work on creation and creation theology and how important that is in the life of the Christian and the redemption of the world. So that's something very exciting. He's also married. He has 3 grandchildren. And I'm just really excited that he can be here with us today. So, Jonathan, would you share with us from the Word?
Thank you.
You want me to pass?
Yeah, you start. Well, I'm excited to be here. I met Diana a few years ago when she was going through the ordination sort of process at Carey Theological College, where I previously taught, and we connected there and started talking about my coming here, and it's taken us this long to get me here. So I'm delighted to be here with you today. You're in the midst of a series on how to read. That lends itself more to a kind of instructional approach than a proclamation of the gospel. So I really want to empower you today in our time together for you to be able to read Scripture well. And today we're going to be learning how to read the book of Proverbs. This is part of what has traditionally been called the wisdom literature in the Old Testament. You should have learned over the last couple of weeks, I think you've been learning how to read Ecclesiastes and Job and now Proverbs. Those are all part of what we call the wisdom literature of the Old Testament. Now, wisdom is God's life-giving, eternal order in which He made everything. Everything visible and invisible that is not God is made in wisdom. So wisdom is God's righteous order in the universe. It's life-giving. It's life-sustaining. It is how to live. And so it's not only that ordering of the universe for life, but it's also our ability to live in that order. If you're learning some skill, like sewing or a martial art like Taekwondo. My wife's Korean, so I have to say Taekwondo, right? If you're learning something like that, there are skills, ways, training that you enter into in order to learn how to do that. Well, wisdom is simply the way we learn to live in God's order, the way God made the world. Now, in my lifetime, when I began studying wisdom many years ago, all of the wisdom literature in the Old Testament, Proverbs, Job, Ecclesiastes, were kind of considered something outside all the good stuff, like prophecy and the law. But now, today, we're beginning to talk about wisdom as the shaping of the whole of the Old Testament. And it's not part of the sermon today or part of the teaching today, but when we look at the New Testament, we find that Jesus is really the embodiment of wisdom. He is the one who shows us ultimately the wisdom of God. And we sang a song earlier about how the cross appears to be foolishness to the world, but it's the wisdom of God. Because the cross is where God turns an upside-down world right side up. It's where God takes the foolishness of the world and exposes it for foolishness and shows us true wisdom. Jesus lived the way of wisdom. But today we're going to look at the book of Proverbs. Proverbs is really a two-part book. Chapters 1 through 9 are one part, and chapters 10 through 31 are the second part. We're going to look at each of those in a little while, and I know you have a lot of interaction sometimes with sermons, so you're going to get a three-part sermon today, and there's going to be an opportunity for you to think, an opportunity for you to work as well as we move through our understanding of how to read Proverbs. We're going to begin with Proverbs chapter 1, verses 1 through 7. The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. This is the introduction to the book. This is really sort of how to read this entire book. For gaining wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight, for receiving instruction in prudent behavior, doing what is right and just and fair, for giving prudence to those who are simple, knowledge and discretion to the young. Let the wise listen and add to their learning, and let the discerning get guidance, for understanding proverbs and parables, the sayings and riddles of the wise. The fear of the Lord, or as I will read it, the fear of I am, is the beginning of knowledge. But fools despise wisdom and instruction. Do you want to live a full life? Do you want to live life well? Do you want to live life abundantly? Here it is. And there's a whole wonderful range of words that are included here. One commentator on the book of Proverbs calls this the rainbow of wisdom. You know, when you look at a rainbow, you see the whole rainbow, but then you see all of the different colors sort of blending together. And I love the notion of a rainbow bow because it's beautiful, it's attractive. I've sometimes seen a rainbow and called my wife up and said, you got to go outside, there's a double rainbow over Falls Creek. You got to see that. Wisdom should be that kind of beauty and attractiveness to us. We should be saying to one another, hey, this wisdom of God, you got to know about this. You got to learn this. And it's a beautiful rainbow. There are different Hebrew words behind these English words that are on your handout. I worked hard to learn Hebrew, so sometimes I like to recall it. I'm still just barely holding on to it. It's Chokmah, usually translated wisdom, Bina, understanding, Da'at, knowledge, Mezamah, prudence, Haskel, shrewdness, Takbuloth, guidance, and Lekach, erudition. I'll explain that last in a little bit. But you can't catch those Hebrew words, but I want you to know there's a specific Hebrew word behind each of these. And they have something really specific to teach us. Chokmah, wisdom, is the big picture. It's wisdom. And then it has all these different parts. Understanding. This is insight into how the world works and how people think. So you're sitting in a working group at work, or you've got a task that your teachers have given you at school, and you're having to work in a team. And understanding how people are going to contribute and their strengths and their weaknesses. This is understanding. Knowledge. It's just basic knowledge. I used to call this the Jeopardy champion kind of knowledge. You just know things and you can recall it. When was Confederation? That's Dodd, right? 1867. Right? Okay. No? Yes, it was. That's just knowledge, knowing something. But then there's another step along knowledge, and this is the last one, erudition, knowing the significance of something. So not just knowing Confederation was in 1867, but knowing that these colonies got together and became one country, and knowing the significance of that for the development of a country that we call Canada today. Prudence. Prudence is just practical wisdom. Just good sense. That's what this is about. shrewdness. Now, shrewdness is an interesting one. Sometimes it's a negative thing. Shrewdness is being able to take advantage of someone and get a better price for a used car than you really should. It's knowing how to conceal the fact that that car is about to fall apart. Okay, that's shrewdness. But shrewdness in this sense is also not being taken advantage of. Just because we're God's people and just because we're Christians doesn't mean that we can let people take advantage of us in a business deal. Or when we're contracting for some work in a property that the church owns, or when we're managing our funds, the various funds that you have for maintaining ministry and carrying out mission. You need to be shrewd. Guidance. This is the word takbuloth. It means, it's a reference to the lines on a sailboat or on a ship. It's knowing how to trim the sail in order to get the maximum power from the sailboat. This is knowing how to guide a group of people. This is the gift of leadership or management or administration. And then finally, I've already referred to erudition. This is the constituency, the rainbow of wisdom. And do you get the fact that this is really quite broad in its understanding? This is about all of life. This is not just about what we do on Sunday. This is not just about what we do in a Bible study and the kind of character we have there. This is about how we live our entire life. And all of it is meant to be directed towards, in verse 3, right in the middle there, you get the most important stuff: righteousness, justice, and equity. Ted asked us to consider the things that disturb us earlier in our prayer. And a lot of our minds go to the injustices, the unrighteousness, the oppression in the world. Do you want to address that? Do you want to make a difference there? Become wise. And then you can not simply change the world, but bring the world into alignment with God's purposes. That's really our calling. That should be our passion. And all of it is summed up in verse 7. The fear of I am is the beginning of knowledge. The fear of I am is the beginning of knowledge. Shouldn't it be the love of I am? Why is it the fear of I am that's the beginning of knowledge? I'm a little, at this point, my anxiety is rising just a little bit, because what I want to ask you to do now is to talk with one another for just a couple of minutes, just maybe 3 to 5 minutes, about how you respond to this notion of the fear of I am. Does it just seem like something that, no, that doesn't make any sense of everything else I've heard from the Bible and from the gospel and about Jesus Christ? That just doesn't make any sense. Or, well, I think it makes sense in this way. I'm hoping that you're able to explore that just a little bit with one another. Will you turn to someone close to you and talk about that? Listen to one another. What do you feel? What is your emotion? What are your thoughts when you hear this phrase, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom or knowledge? Talk with one another for just a moment. I've been hearing, or I have a new anxiety now. Thank you for exploring that. Were you able to discover something positive about fear? Fear is usually, I overheard one conversation, and I suspect it's the same as other places. Fear is usually a negative emotion, and it's a response to something that's threatening to you, something that could be harmful to you. So those are the things that we often focus on with our fears. But is there a way in which the fear of I am could be a positive emotion, something that brings us to life? That's the question that's raised for us here. And I have to tell you, I don't know if Diana remembers this from a couple of the things that she's done with me. By the way, she's also taught in my class when I taught a class at Regent. She was a guest lecturer, so there's a whole group of Regent students from the Missional Church course who know a little bit about this congregation and about your life together. But I'm the kind of teacher that likes to leave students with questions to carry away so that you continue to grow, you continue to wrestle with things. So is there a sense in which Proverbs telling us that the fear of I am is the beginning of knowledge, does that tell us something about our circumstances in life? Does that tell us something about the way that we often live without really paying attention to the dangers that we're facing? That's a question. I'm actually going to give you a partial answer in just a little bit. Second part of the sermon is to look at the first part of the book of Proverbs, chapters 1 through 9. When my wife and I go to swim at Hillcrest, there's a sign as you go into the pool area, please shower before entering pool. Right? I recently had a very minor day surgery, and I watched the doctor, the surgeon who was performing the little surgery, scrub. Not a big scrub, because we weren't going into an OR and all of that, but I watched him scrub and prepare himself for the surgery and drape me and put betadine on the surgical site and all this sort of thing. Proverbs 1 through 9 should have a sign there saying, please read before entering chapters 10 through 31. Proverbs 1 through 9 is that shower that cleanses us of all of the little dirt and impurities that we don't want to carry into the swimming pool if we can avoid it. Proverbs 1 through 9, I say, redirect our vision, or correct our vision, reorient our desires, and counter-cultivate our lives. Before you enter Proverbs 10 through 31. Proverbs 10 through 31 is really where we begin to be taught wisdom. Proverbs 10 through 31 are going to give us a lot of power, insight, understanding, knowledge, shrewdness. We could use all of those things to abuse other people. We could use all of those things to gain power for ourselves. And so Proverbs 1 through 9 are the way in which we cleanse our hearts of impurities before we acquire the wisdom of chapters 10 through 31. Proverbs 1 through 9 is the way our vision is corrected or redirected towards God. And I say Proverbs 1 through 9 counter-cultivate our lives. All through the week, your life is being cultivated by the world around you. You are being taught certain desires. You are being taught certain ways of thinking about the world. You are being taught to pay attention to certain specific things. And if we were doing this in a different setting, we could explore those more. But all of those things are cultivating your life toward folly, toward foolishness. They are counter-cultivating you towards the way of death. And that's why we need Proverbs 1 through 9 to counter-cultivate our lives. To cultivate in us a desire for the life that God gives. even though the world may look on it as foolishness. To counter-cultivate a desire to use our ability in speech to care for others, to heal others, rather than to wound them, rather than to manipulate them or control them. Proverbs 1 through 9 does that by providing us with a series of images and what I call here vignettes, little short stories. Those vignettes are almost like when you're watching a television series and it says, previously on NCIS, and then you get the little snippets of scenes from the previous episode. These vignettes are just short, illuminating scenes to help us understand the world we live in and the dangers that we face. Proverbs 1 through 9 confronts us with the life and death choices that we are making all the time, even when we don't know we are making them. We'll pick that up in the third part of the sermon. Life and death. Those are the choices. Proverbs uses several images to help us understand and cultivate a desire for wisdom. It's a bit like the fragrance or aroma when you're cooking a really wonderful meal. And it stimulates your appetite. And I can't wait to sit down and eat that. Perhaps that's a bad image to use at this point in the morning. You're already thinking, oh, what am I going to eat? No. The food that we have to eat right now is wisdom. And so, the tree of life. Let me ask you to just interact with me a little bit during this part of the sermon. Proverbs chapter... well, I'm actually not going to tell you. I decided not to put the references on here. That's going to be homework for you. I want to draw you into the text. Not right now. Maintain eye contact with me. But afterwards, one of the things you could do is read through the text of Proverbs and find where these images are and explore them a little bit more. Tree of life is here in the book of Proverbs. Do you know where else that occurs in Scripture? Genesis and Revelation. Those are the only other two places that this image occurs. Now, there's images about trees, and in Psalm 1, we're like a tree planted by rivers of living water when we meditate on God's Word and bring it into our lives. But these are the other two places. Think about that. Genesis prior to the fall, and Revelation after the renewal of all creation. Those are the other two places that we get the tree of life. What we're being invited into through wisdom is living in that beautiful, wonderful reality now. Creation before its fallenness, creation after its restoration. That's where we want to live. That's the deepest longing of our hearts if we really recognize it. And Proverbs, wisdom is offering us the opportunity to live that life now. To live it in the midst of the fallenness of the world, to live it in the midst of the struggles of the world. And so it's not the perfect world of Genesis or of Revelation, but it is God's life-giving, life-sustaining order that we're invited into. Wisdom is also described as the craftsperson. Wisdom is the one through whom God made all things, which then gets picked up in Colossians and is used of Jesus Christ. He is the one by whom and for whom all things are made. Wisdom is an invitation into the life of discipleship, following Jesus. Wisdom is the way. You got that one? Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. We talked about being afraid of getting lost, didn't we? Yeah. You want to know the way. Well, tell me the way. This is it. Wisdom enables us to live in the way. And finally, wisdom is the one in whom God delights. I'm learning this at this point in my life. I'm a pretty old guy to be learning this right now. God delights in me. God takes joy in me. And Sue Juan and I have a devotional thing called sacred reading, which we do pretty much every time we're together, every morning that we're together. And one of the main themes is there's a point in there where it says, listen to Jesus. And you know what Jesus says? I delight in you. I love you. Wisdom is entering into what God delights in and bringing God pleasure. The vignettes are there just to remind you. They're meant to be kind of funny and charming, but also pretty sharp and pointed as well. We're going to look at one of those in Proverbs chapter 9. In the Hebrew, chokmah is a feminine noun. Chokmah, Torah, Shekinah, three of the most significant words in the Old Testament, are feminine nouns. In the book of Proverbs, wisdom is portrayed as a woman preaching on the street corner. It is also the case that among all of the wisdom literature in the ancient world, and we've got wisdom literature from Egypt, from Mesopotamia, from Assyria, from Ugarit, another place in the ancient world, only in the book of Proverbs is the mother also a teacher of wisdom. So just fascinating. It's just I don't know entirely what to make of that, but it's a fascinating part of the biblical story. Proverbs 9, and so let's have a little short sermon here. Wisdom has built her house. She has set up its 7 pillars. She has prepared her meat and mixed her wine. She has also set her table. She has sent out her servants, and she calls from the highest point of the city, let all who are simple come to my house. To those who have no sense, she cries, come, eat my food and drink the wine I have mixed. Leave your simple ways and you will live. Walk in the way of insight. Now here another sermon that occurs at the end of chapter 9. Folly is an unruly woman. She is simple and knows nothing. She sits at the door of her house, on a seat at the highest point of the city, calling out to those who pass by, who go straight on their way, let all who are simple come to my house. Same invitation. To those who have no sense, she says, now it becomes different. Stolen water is sweet. Food eaten in secret is delicious. But little do they know that the dead are there, that her guests are deep already in the realm of Sheol. This is why the fear of I am is the beginning of wisdom. Because this is the situation we find ourselves in. We're standing on the street corner, and here's wisdom preaching on one corner and folly preaching on the other. Oh, stolen water tastes delicious. Food eaten in secret is wonderful. It separates you from everyone else. And wisdom is saying, come learn of me. She has also set her table. There's wine and meat there for you. But it's a different invitation. What is our heart drawn to? what are our desires? Do we want to walk in the way of life or in the way of death? That's the question that we face in Proverbs 1 through 9. Now let's turn to Proverbs 10 through 31. Just a couple of reminders from Proverbs 1 through 9. First of all, from the very first verses in Proverbs 1 through 9, chapter 1, remember, wisdom is a very broad understanding, engages all of life. And so when we enter chapters 10 through 31, we're going to get everything under the sun covered by the instruction, by the teaching here. So also remember that the challenge to us is, what does our heart really long for? In some ways, chapters 10 through 31 are a question of our character. What do we really want to be in life? And so we engage the very nature of a proverb. This is probably the key to gaining wisdom and to understanding the book of Proverbs. Here on the second side of the handout, the nature of a proverb. By the way, the word that's translated proverb here is also the word used for parable. So the parables that Jesus teach are very similar to the Proverbs that we read in this book, and to the little vignettes. I could have really, when I talked about the vignettes in Proverbs 1 through 9, I could have talked about the parables of Proverbs 1 through 9. The more I study and learn Proverbs and spend time in it, the more I think Jesus spent all kinds of time in Proverbs, learning wisdom. So, in the book of Proverbs, you have sayings that test your character. Here's the first one. The poor are, here's three examples. The poor are shunned even by their neighbors, but the rich have many friends. Okay? What do you think when you hear that? Yeah, exactly. That's why I want to be rich. I want friends. Or do you say, yeah, good. That gives me a reason for not befriending the poor. They're a real pain. They drain my resources. They are always needy. This is great. Wonderful proverb. Thank you for teaching me that. No. That's not what this is about. This proverb is actually testing you. When you read that proverb, do you say, that's right, but it's wrong. That's the way the world works, but that's not the way God's wisdom works. You also get, in these chapters, what I've labeled here an admonition. We just find words to capture the different emphases of Proverbs that we encounter. An admonition goes like this, something like this. Whoever oppresses the poor shows contempt for their Maker, but whoever is kind to the needy honors God. Now, this doesn't command something. It commends something. Do you get the difference? It's not commanding us to do something, but it is commending something to us. You read that and you say, I know what to do. I know how I should behave. I know what I should care about and think about when it comes to the poor. And then finally you have a command. Do not exploit the poor because they are poor, and do not crush the needy in court. For I will take up their case and will extract life for life. Now, this last kind of statement here, the command that tells you, be quiet, or do this, or don't do that, there's not very many of those in the book of Proverbs. They actually occur toward the end of the book. Most of the book is testing our character, challenging us, leaving it to us to make decisions about what we really care about, what we really desire. I was at dinner Friday night with a couple of our friends, And one of them was saying that she's been listening to the book of Proverbs as she commutes to work. And she said she gets just a chapter or two in. She's got about a 40-minute commute. She gets about 10 or 15 minutes in, and she has to turn off the audio because it's just overwhelming. You read a book of Proverbs and you say, and I'm not making a joke about this because it's a significant issue for some people, but you say the author of the book of Proverbs may have been suffering from attention deficit disorder because it goes everywhere. You read a chapter and it's just all over the place in what it teaches and what it's talking about and the topics it's dealing with. That makes it difficult to acquire wisdom. But I want to help you acquire wisdom. And so let me give you 5 ways of acquiring wisdom. I think we're good with time. What time should I be finished with this? Okay, I'll take 15. Thank you. Here's what you do. You choose a month that has 31 days in it. Okay? March. It's coming up really soon. How timely is that? Why 31 days? Because Proverbs has 31 chapters. So, you read a chapter a day. It doesn't take you any time at all. But here's what you do when you read that chapter. You listen for 1 or at most 2 proverbs that jump out at you, that you want to think about. And depending upon how you work with your smartphone, you could put it on notes. You could highlight it on the YouVersion of your Bible. You could use an old business card that isn't any good anymore and has a blank side and write the proverb on that business card. And during the day, when you're at a stoplight maybe, or when you're in an elevator, or when you're on hold on the phone, or just taking a breath, pull it out, read the proverb, and think about how it can become a part of your day. What does it illuminate about your day? How might you be able to live out that wisdom that day? Proverbs are laser beams. They're not big floodlights. They don't illuminate all of reality at once. They shine a light on one particular aspect of reality at a time. They are not promises from God. They are a way of cultivating wisdom in us and shaping our character. So that's one way to acquire wisdom. That daily reading, I do it 3 times a year. I choose 3 months of the year that have 31 days, and I do that. I've been doing that for, well, not every year, but at least every other year for about 30 years now. A second way to acquire wisdom, do a character study. Proverbs is filled with these wonderful characters. The wise person, but then also the naif or the naive person. The simple is the word we heard earlier in Proverbs 9. That's the Hebrew word pati. The fool, which has actually 3 different Hebrew words. I just gave you 2 of them. I just wanted you to know that there are specific words that are being translated here in this way. And then the mocker. The naive person, the simple person, is a person that doesn't know there's trouble in the world. This is the goof. This is all of us before we realize that there are dangers in the world. This is the person who's just walking down the street going, doo, 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 and is seduced by folly, saying, come in here. Oh, that sounds good. And you don't know that you're entering into the house of death. That's the simple. This is the person who is going astray and doesn't know it. Then there's the fool. fool is the person who's stubborn in their folly. They've chosen the way of folly. They're down the path, and they think, this is the good life. The mocker is the one who is further down the path of folly and thinks that folly is wisdom and wisdom is folly. This is the person who would say to you, you are stupid people spending your Sunday morning in a little room listening to one guy talk and singing a few songs when you could just be sitting at a coffee shop relaxing. Or you could be sleeping in. Or you could be cross-country skiing. You're fools to be doing this. That's the mocker. And there are a lot of mockers in our world. And they are the ones that a lot of people are drawn to and following. The sluggard. I got to tell you about this one for just a minute. I first encountered Proverbs when I was a Regent student, and I had a bed that I had rescued from a lane. And it was a terrible bed. I had to bolt it to the wall to keep it upright. And the springs sagged, and so I put my footlocker under there in another box in order to get it up high enough that I could actually sleep on it. But I didn't sleep all that well. And I tended to be a night person at that time, so I'd go to bed, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and then I'd wake up at 6 or 7 because the bed was so uncomfortable, and I'd turn over and I'd go back to sleep for an hour, and then I would turn over and go back to sleep for an hour, and then I'd wake up and turn over and go back to sleep for an hour, and I read this proverb: a sluggard turns on his bed like a door on its hinges. Nailed. I'm not sure I was a sluggard. I just needed a better bed. But sluggard is one of those studies you could make. It's really interesting. The book of Proverbs distinguishes between a sluggard who is poor and the poor who are oppressed and the victims of injustice. Really important distinction. You can look at the wayward woman or the poor person. One of the interesting things about the book of Proverbs is that it contains observations about creation. Go to the ant, you sluggard, and learn. Look at the lilies of the field. Look at the birds of the air. This is wisdom from observing God's good world. And finally, the book of Proverbs tells us to have wise companions. Friends who are wise and a spouse who is wise. This helps us acquire wisdom as well. I had one other exercise for you to do, but I think I will give that to you for another time, for your own pleasure and enjoyment. I hope that I've cultivated a little bit of a desire for wisdom. God's eternal, life-sustaining order, embodied in Jesus Christ, reclaimed through the cross of Christ for us to live. And this book will give you so much in knowing how to live in this world. I want to conclude with the parting lessons, and then there's another handout. I'll say a word about this now because I want to end on a different note. What I have here is a front and back handout of Proverbs about speech. So, wise speech. This is a topical study that you could go into. And I saved talking about the topical study for, I was going to do this exercise. Do a topical study. Gather up all the Proverbs that talk about money or talk about discipline. Here are many, not all of the Proverbs that talk about speech. And just read these and ask yourself, what am I learning about wise speech? You'll learn things like What's the most powerful kind of speech? What are the limits on speech? What is good speaking? And there's all kinds of things about speech that draw in wisdom and understanding and prudence and shrewdness and erudition and knowledge. You got to know what to say, but you also have to understand how to say it to a particular group of people. And you've also got to know when to say it. That's wisdom, and you can acquire that by meditating, reflecting on that topic. The lesson of Kohelet, or Ecclesiastes, in relation to the book of Proverbs, tells us why we want to become wise. I'm not sure what all you considered when you looked at the book of Ecclesiastes, but here's one lesson from the book of Ecclesiastes that's important as you acquire wisdom. Ecclesiastes teaches us that we acquire wisdom not to be famous, not to be powerful, not to feed our own pleasures. That's all the things that the author, that the preacher in Ecclesiastes says he got, right? And what did it turn out to be? Empty, meaningless. Because the purpose of acquiring wisdom is to be wise before God. That's it. Becoming wise is its own reward, its own good thing. Proverbs reminds us that no matter how wise we become, we are not as wise as God. Our wisdom doesn't go all the way back, all the way up, all the way down, or all the way forward. So sometimes, no matter how wise we become, we should just keep our mouths shut instead of speaking like Job's friends did. Finally, let's return to Proverbs 2, 1 to 11. My beloved, if you accept my words and store up my commands within you, turning your ear to wisdom and applying your heart to understanding, if indeed you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding, and if you look for it as for silver and search for it as for hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of I am and find the knowledge of God. This is a powerful statement about the discipline, the passion, the effort that it takes for us to acquire wisdom. Cry aloud for it. Search for it. I watched a show one time about treasure hunters. And this one guy had become so passionate about finding particular treasure, he had bankrupted himself. Because he was so passionate about finding this treasure. Wisdom is a treasure that will never bankrupt you. But do we have that kind of passion for acquiring it? And then comes the surprise. Then comes the twist that comes from our God. Verse 6 in chapter 2. After all this effort, after all this crying out, after all this work, for I am gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. Wisdom ultimately is God's gift to us. It is embodied fully in Jesus Christ. And if we live this life-sustaining, eternal way of wisdom in a world that is in rebellion, we will struggle. We will suffer. But we will be suffering and struggling toward the way life is meant to be. We will be living with the grain of the universe as God created us to live. Be wise.